I'm Xiang Li from Tsinghua University. And in this talk, we propose a new attack named Phoenix domain, which can make a revoked domain still resolvable for a very long time. And in the following, I will focus on how we find the vulnerability and how we manage and what's the mitigation to completely fix this vulnerability. Okay, to start with, we all know domain name system provide a solid basis for multiple applications and services, such as email and CDN and something else. And according to VeriSign's stats, there are about 350 million domains have been registered. However, domain cuts both ways. They are also abused to conduct malicious activities, such as botnet communication, phishing, and some malicious activities. So, and according to ICANN's stats, they found about 1,000 domains showing some security threats. So to defend against the security issues caused by domain names, the community proposed some measures to mitigate it, such as the domain name revocation. So through domain name revocation, the domain controlled by the attackers or the original user, they can no longer control the domain. There are two ways, such as the domain delisting or domain sinkholding. The domain name revocation has been applied for a very long time. For example, Microsoft seized .org organization domain in 2012, and the US also seized malicious activities domain last year. So we wonder how that domain revocation works, and it is the reverse process of the domain delegation. Basically, it is also the reverse process of the domain registration. So here is how the domain revocation works. First, before the revocation, anyone, including the client or the attacker, can register a domain, and the registry will add the name server record to the such as the com TLD zone file, and delegate the domain to the client, such as the botnet.com. And after detection of some malicious activity, the registry may be deleting the name server record in the TLD zone file, or changing the name server to some other controlled name servers, such as the sinkholding. So after the domain name revocation has been applied so many years, we wonder that domain revocation works as desired. However, the answer is no, because a ghost domain in 2012 has broken this guarantee. So what is a ghost domain? Ghost domain is proposed by our lab in 2012, and the paper is also accepted by NDSS. And the ghost domain tries to make a revoked domain still resolvable on some target resolvers. So the basic idea of ghost domain is before revocation, attacker tries to make the target resolver to cache some name server record of his own domain, such as botnet.com. So after revocation, the botnet.com has been removed from the com TLD. So in this time, attackers can, because the cached name server record is still alive, you can notice there is a TTL value, and it's valid. So the target resolver will still use this cached record to query some, to resolve some clients queries from the clients. So attacker can return new name server record and return a large TTL value. So the resolver will cache the new one and update the TTL to a larger one. So the cache will be always alive and refreshed round by round. So this is the ghost domain. So 10 years later, in 23, we wonder that after we fixing ghost domain, does revocation work as desired? However, the answer is still no. And although ghost domain has been, after disclosure, ghost domain just affected several software. And as a mitigation, the TTL field cannot be prolonged as a restriction. Here is some examples from the previous paper. So after 10 years today, we still find some vulnerabilities that ghost domain, domain name revocation is still vulnerable because we find some new attacker named Phoenix domain to still break this guarantee. And before we describe how the Phoenix domain works, we try to find out why the ghost domain is still vulnerable. And the first is ghost domain is also proposed by our lab, and we find a broader impact because ghost domain first breaks the guarantees imposed to the ghost domain, and has two variations named T1 and T2, and in overall, Phoenix domain affects all DNS implementations because the root cause is from the DNS protocol itself. So before we describe the attack details of Phoenix domain, we try to explain why the domain name revocation is still vulnerable. Because we find there are actually many operations of the cache, and the ghost domain just started one of them. So here is the DNS cache operation we summarized after we reviewing the RC and the several DNS implementations. And we summarized the DNS cache operation into four parts, including the cache searching, cache insertion, cache deletion, and cache updating. But for ghost domain, for the blue part, they just exploit some vulnerabilities in the cache updating part. We find the other parts are still exploitable to do the same attack for the ghost domain. So how does Phoenix domain works? And there are two variations, such two ways. So for part one, Phoenix domain T1, the key idea is also like the ghost domain. So before revocation, we still need to make the target resolver cache some records of the attacker's own domain, such as botnet.com. So after revocation, different from the ghost domain, which can insert a new name server record at any time, we need to control the time of return a new name server record. So for T1, we try to return a new name server record when the cache is about to expire. So why we choose this time? Because to bypass the TTL updating restriction, we need to guarantee the cached data is about to expire. And after we return a new name server record, the cache has been removed. So the new record will be cached directly. So this is the key idea. So for this slide, I show some detailed attack steps. For the target resolver, after the attacker query a domain of his controlled name server, the attacker just holds the query for a timeout. So we can exploit this timeout to delay some responses until on the target resolver side, they consider the cached record is about to expire and be removed. Then the attacker return the new name server record. So for this time, after the target resolver receives the new record, there is no cached anymore. So the return the new name server record is cached. So this is attack T1. We just we exploit a dedicated time window to inject the new name server record. So for T2, which has a had a larger influence because it is influencing all the DSA implementations. The key idea is before the revocation, we do the same operation. So after revocation, we find some other way to inject the new records because we can leverage some subdomain of current domain. Because the subdomain name server hasn't been cached, so the target resolver will cache any name server record we return. And because we can inject more than 100 records of the subdomain iteratively, it's about the length of the maximum domain name. And by doing so, we can inject we can keep the cache be alive for 100 times of the large TTL time. So for a TTL like 7 days, we can keep the cache for alive more than 2 years. So totally, we analyzed some software to validate our proposed attack, and we find for T1, 4 software are affected, and for T2, they affect all the popular DNS software, including bind and PowerDNS, and many of them. And we also obtained the 9 CVE numbers for all of the softwares. So we also tested the attack on 41 popular public resolvers, including Google, Cloudflare, and all of them are vulnerable to T1 or T2. And we also get a confirmation from all of them. So for this, the part I mentioned, we tested them maybe one by one. And further, we try to analyze what's the broad impact of our attack. So we try to do a large measurement to see how many open resolvers are affected. And by collecting the open resolvers, we select 210,000 recursive resolvers as a target and do a large long-term experiment and using the same attack styles and our own controlled domain. So the results show after 1 week, there are still 40% resolvers are still exploitable. And after 1 month, there are still 25% resolvers cache the records of our own name server, even they have been removed from the registered zone files. And as some mitigation, we proposed 62 mitigation solutions to all the software and public resolver vendors, and they have adopted our mitigation policies and applied it to their fixing patches. For example, for M1, we need to revalidate the NS record, because if the resolver decides the NS from the parent and from the child is different, there may be some attack clues. So this is for M1. Such as for M2, we can trust the NS from the parent more than the child. And we can also use some small TTL values to reduce the impact of our attack. And for M1, there is also an RFC draft, and our paper also mentioned in this draft to push this RFC into pushing this draft into an FC. Here at the conclusion, we propose a new attack named the Phoenix domain, which can make a revoked domain still resolvable for a long time. So by doing so, we can the direct use cases is we can leverage it to not just to do some malicious activities for any domain, such as our own website or homepage. If we don't want to pay any fee for the domain registration, we can also use this method to do some trick. And the Phoenix domain is supported by two normal vulnerabilities. One is T1 and one is the other is T2. And in total, they affect all the DNS implementations. Because T2 just caused by the de facto practice standards, because all the DNS software are running the same recursive resolution process, and they don't think it's an issue. But we demonstrate there is something wrong with them, and we need to mitigate them. And by scanning the large number of open resolvers, we also show they have a comprehensive influence in the wild. And we also propose some detailed mitigation solutions to the vendors. In the end, our paper and our work are also well acknowledged in the DNS community, such as ORC and ICANN. And our attack also accepted by Black Hat Asia. And we also will show some maybe details in there. Sorry. Yeah, this is my share today. Thank you all for your attention.
Full disclosure, I'm Westberg from USCI side. I'm also an ICANN board member, but I'm not speaking on that behalf. The real fundamental issue to me is that the DNS protocol is often short-circuited because of speed desires, right? So to me, the only correct mitigation should be your M1. In other words, revalidating the parent with the proper delegation. So that should fix everything. That's probably the right way to do it.
It's a nice question. And there's some details about the revalidation mechanism. Basically, the resolver can validate every parent node or just validate the top, such as the SLE level. So that will be very simple for the whole validation process.
Did you try this with the DNSSEC protected domain where they would normally have to requery the parent of the DS record in order for it to be valid?
Sorry, can you repeat the?
Did you try this technique with a DNSSEC protected domain, which requires revalidating the DS record that's in the parent?
Yeah, the parent.
Yeah, then so with DNSSEC protected, they have to talk to the parent. So
right.
I was wondering if this only works for non-DNSSEC protected domains.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. I probably have time for one more question.
So I had more. So this should only work for existing bot instances that are behind existing resolvers of which they have control, right? So new bot instances behind new resolvers this won't work for. So one of my last questions is, isn't techniques like fast flux changing of names actually still a better way to achieve the same goal where you're just getting new registrations all the time?
It's also part that we talked in our paper, that to make just like the evasion maybe techniques, attacks can use such as some flags domain to do some similar with. And for our attack T2, we also need to change our domain names every round, because we need to insert some subdomain, and next time we need to inject the subdomain of the per subdomain. So the domain name is also changed every one. So this is also maybe a feature to do some detection. Yeah.